Hey, Cam, can you hear me?
Ooh, you're turned down really low.
I'm turned up really loud or really low?
Low.
Oh, let me change my volume.
Hopefully everybody
Better?
can hear me.
Better? Better? Better for you? Hello?
I don't know if I can check chat because my phone is on like not on the school internet, but the school internet's so unreliable that I have nothing else open on the computer.
You don't need to read the chat. I was just, Discord's
So
really the only thing you need.
if I just stop talking mid-sentence, assume that my Wi-Fi cut out, okay? I am
Fair enough.
deeply sorry about that.
You don't need to apologize for that. Would you mind saying some random gibberish so I could get your level about right?
Wake up, liberal. I
uh
love you.
blah 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 blah.
All right, thank
Blah
you.
blah 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 blah.
Seems
Wake
good.
up, liberal.
Let me
I
finish with
love
some
you.
real gibberish. Anarcho-capitalism.
Damn, you nailed it, my dude.
Wake up, liberal.
Yeah.
I love you.
I'll try to be
Wake up,
interesting for
liberal.
however
I
long
love
I'm
you.
on.
Sure. So I guess as a framing, let's see. Sorry, it's been a few days. Okay. So I guess as a framing, why don't we do it the standard chilling sort of thing? So why don't you tell us like who you are, what you do, and where people can find you?
Yeah, I am Cameron Karsten. I'm a college student, and I'm also a podcast host, um, otherwise known as something that's questionably a job. Uh, I don't make money, so it's definitely not. But for today, I'm just really interested in like city planning because I do like traveling. Despite how few cities I've been to is the best way I could probably put that.
Mm-hmm.
But just like observing like the environments around, like I'm fairly involved in the local politics of at least the city that is where I'm from,
Good on you.
and I guess it's just kind of let me think here. I was not expecting this question. Bad at small talk.
Well, what when I ask what you do, usually I'm just asking for people to shill their channel. So
Okay, shield. I can
I
do that. I know how to shield. So I'm the one of the podcast hosts, arguably the main
Wake up,
host
liberal.
of this
I
podcast
love
called
you.
Leftology. It is on YouTube, obviously, and then it is on most streaming services. Um, Go check it out if you can. We haven't posted an episode in a month, and I'm fairly sorry about that. But we have a lot of content. If you're not one of our 92 subscribers, which probably are 5 or me.
well, I went on Leftology once and talked. Ugh, I went on Leftology once and talked with y'all, and it seemed good. So I can't say that I've listened to it all, but given that I was there, I'm sure it's only the highest quality stuff.
It's up there. We do better than some. There's some low bars. I think we're better than the Bad Faith podcast.
Low bar indeed.
Low bar indeed, but it's a bar we made.
So I guess, what is the general topic you are interested in talking about this evening?
I guess city planning. I guess public housing kind of has to do with that, which is
Mm-hmm.
most of what people care about on Twitter in the circles that both of us kind of exist in.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I like having a more expansive view of it. I don't want to sound pretentious or anything. But I don't think just like considering like one issue or the other is quite good enough. You kind of have to consider all of it. And because this affects people, like my opinion on economics, which a lot of people in our circles disagree with, I believe you should take moral considerations in what you do, what policies you have, what things you do. Like
Mm-hmm.
these things affect people on an individual and a societal level. You kind of have to take in consideration the effects. You can't just try and maximize one line or the other. You can't just do graphy things and like expect everything to work out for everybody. You have to look into it. I mean, it goes along with empirics and stuff like that, but which you're a firm believer in, and I'm not going to
No.
be against it.
So I guess up front, I should say that I don't have too much like formal empirical evidence about urban planning. Most of the stuff that I've got is like related reading around It's stuff about like I read a little bit about like Soviet urban planning. I think you mentioned City Beautiful. They did a little thing on Soviet urban planning,
They had
which
a good episode on that. I would suggest checking that out if you guys haven't in the audience.
it broadly mimicked what I had read from a few books that I skimmed a bit and then read parts of about Soviet urban planning, and then a little bit it's related to just like stuff related to cars and suburbs.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I have like too much of a granular detail of like what good urban planning looks like. So I guess
There's
like go ahead.
There's a lot of different types of good urban planning, I would say. Like, it's not
Mhm.
just a one size fits all kind of deal. And I do think that's probably what's best about it, honestly, is because urban planning is like the thing is one of the things that's going to affect you the most, if you live in a city at least, which I suspect most people do at this point. That's probably empirically proven.
Well, and
But
even for people living in the suburbs, there's a type of urban planning which leads to the suburb as they currently exist, right? Like they are not devoid of urban planning either.
they're not devoid of urban planning. They're just devoid of good urban planning because
Basically,
they're in the
yeah.
suburbs.
There was a
That's an
tiny
opinion that I can back up by just urban planning or urban sprawl slander.
I know there was a short Vox video I listened to, but didn't look into the sources on, so I don't know if it's true, which suggested that suburbs in Canada have substantially better like bus service, and this makes them much more integrated into the city as a whole, which sounded really interesting. But even tiny things like that, to me, speak of the importance of proper urban planning in the suburbs, if true.
Oh, definitely.
So I guess on that note, is there like one topic that you'd like urban planning is huge, right? It literally intersects with almost every part of human life. So like, is there one subtopic that you'd be most interested in starting on?
One subtopic. Ooh, this is honestly probably gonna take me a minute to just rifle
Cameron
through.
sitting in deep thought.
Yeah, I'll just talk until the word comes to my head. I guess it's just, this is still fairly broad, but like urban planning's connection to the community at large is kind of where I want to go, because it has some variety, but it's also slightly more specific.
Sure. I know that one thing that's very much interested me is like how the structure of communities, like the physical built structure, can possibly influence how lonely people are, because there's like a modern loneliness epidemic. And I'm sure that some of that a lot of that is probably social institutions, but I wondered if to some degree built institutions can reshape that as well. But I'm sure that there's like a much broader topic that you'd like to talk about.
I'll go over that for a second, but like architecture does play a role in our life. I imagine you're talking about like the distance of buildings too. But I remember a long time ago, I'm one of those people that have listened to a fairly large amount of Chapo episodes, which a lot of people don't like that podcast, and I understand their criticism. But there was a guest they had on maybe a year and a half ago, and they were talking about architecture in medieval Europe. And they're talking about these it's like the Gothic churches kind of deal, and how they were just so tall and menacing. It was kind of like a show of the dominance that the church had over the common people kind of deal. So, like, these aren't just buildings that things happen in. These are buildings that have actual effects through their architecture, through how they're planned out, on the emotional aspects of humans too, instead of just the material.
Do you this is gonna sound totally tangential. Do you ever play like? Are you a gamer?
I would like to disconnect myself from the traditional gaming crowd, but I do game from time to time. Yes.
There's a really neat indie game creator called Colestia, and their big shtick is about the design of spaces in games and the design of spaces in real life and how it shapes how people behave. So I can send you their itch. They've made lots of neat little games relating to that, which I've enjoyed all of those. But just the whole idea of like dominance, and one that they focus on a lot is like that you can literally feel it in some of the games they create. This idea that you can be guided down paths and so on. It's very fun, very interesting.
I think if we're talking going back to the suburbs, I think the suburbs were kind of meant to be inefficient in the way they were in multiple different ways. Like you have like minimum land use, which is one of the ideas behind it, because you can only fit so many houses that require this size of yard, this side of house. Like you can only fit so many of those in a kilometer by a kilometer, whatever measurement you're going to use, acres. So there's that, and there's also, where was I going?
Well, sure. So I think part of the idea is that like the built space of suburbs, by its very nature of undensity, can make it harder to build connections. I know that.
Yeah, I remember where I was going. Like the suburbs with the little circles that just in streets kind of deal. They're kind of built to me a little bit maze-like, I guess.
Well, they're explicitly built to like avoid thoroughfare, that you're supposed to only come there to like to only come home, sort of thing, which to some extent makes sense in that it's like limiting noise pollution. But in another sense, it's like very poor design from like a getting people around the city perspective.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a disconnect with the rest of the city.
Yeah, cul-de-sacs.
Yeah, cul-de-sacs is the right term for the thing I was trying to say. I should have put a lot more notes down.
You don't worry, my dude. It's a stream. We'll survive. I know that one thing that I thought was really interesting, I want to say this is something they mentioned in the Vox article, but I'd read it elsewhere as well, is that the average trip that it takes for people to get from like one place to another in the United States is something like 15 or 20 minutes for like any daily trip. Like if it's to go to a friend, if it's to go to like the grocery store. And so it all just starts to add up, that all of the things that you want to do are like, it's like 40 minutes both ways to do any little interaction with someone. It's not like walking 5 minutes either. It's like a dedicated drive sort of thing. So not only is there an ecological impact, but there's a time impact. People are literally like whittling away their lives.
Yeah, this is one thing I wanted to get into. Laying the ground for Karstenist city theory, which is
the immortal science of
the immortal science of Marxist-Leninist Maoism, Marxism, Englism, Karstenist cityism. Like the idea of people already talk about this. I'm not going to claim this idea, but in America, in most cities, especially in like the mid-sized cities that I am used to here, and I'm from South Carolina, so I'm going to be talking about like Greenville and Charleston are probably going to be two big ones I focus on, and then my hometown of Florence, which I'm not going to hide. It's in our Twitch bio. I'm not going to hide it. But those are the three I'm going to talk about.
Sure.
Charleston is a little weirder, but like I can talk about Florence, which is about a mid-sized city. It supports maybe about a local metropolis area of 100,000 people. So the way I think of it is a multi-center I cannot pronounce that. Multi-center city is the way I put it. So I want to say it has about 4 city centers in it instead of just one like local or city business district in the middle. So you have like a south side of town center it's kind of, I don't want to say fully, I'm not going to try and explain my hometown. Then you have downtown, which is another center. And then you have the old mall, which is another center. And then you have the newer mall, which is another center. And then everything kind of builds out around those centers. And say I wanted to get from the downtown center to the new mall center, that is going to be probably 10-12 minute drive, honestly. And that's not even accounting for the suburbs that are built around those or the neighborhoods built around them.
Yeah, it gets even much further.
And then you have the Soviet planning, which you've kind of seen. It's somewhat decentralized. I'm not personally not a fan of like the style of housing, because
folks, we're gonna bring him to the brutalist light. Okay,
I'm
square blocks based.
I view them as psychologically oppressive. I can explain that. It's fairly obvious. It's a fucking brick with a door in it.
Look, brutalism, but painted is the ideal. Okay, it's old brutalism, but literally you put a fresh coat of paint on it.
I like different types. My relationship with modernism is fairly weird. Not a fan of what it stands for.
So I know that, so one of the really interesting concepts that came across in studies of Soviet urban planning was this idea of like a linear city. So they imagined the particular model that some of the Soviet planners thought about is there would be like a residential area, and then you would have like light industrial, heavy industrial, and then agricultural. That's the way they thought about it, as on a line. And the idea is that what you would want is within like the residential zone, you would want to make sure that there wasn't any area that was like uniquely endowed with like parks or services or anything. Like you'd want like an equitable distribution of resources to everyone. And similarly, like as you get to like the light industry area, you'd want to make sure that no one is getting screwed over by the pollution area. And so it's this really big emphasis on like provision of services, one, and then two, equitable provision of services, which I thought was really, really interesting. And it just, I don't have much experience with city planning in other countries, but it doesn't feel like in my life, when I've lived in multiple places, like there's been an equitable distribution of services in anywhere that I've lived, or even a real distribution of services. I guess to expand on that one tiny moment, then I'll let you speak. One of the big ideas they had is that it should be walkable to go to like your school. It should be walkable to go to like your doctor. Everything should be within like a short distance of your apartment block. And to some degree, they succeeded and failed. But that was certainly very much not the case in like American planning. So the services that are available are basically locked behind having a car or being willing to bike for quite a long time.
Yeah, or being near them.
Yeah. Or being lucky to be near them, more or less.
Which is something else I'm going to talk about later on. I'm going to save that for later. But City Beautiful explains this in a lot of their videos, kind of how American cities were created. So you have like the normal walkable city. This is your New Yorks, your Charlestons, where else? Your Boston. Think of those cities, Eastern Coast port cities, kind of deal. And then that lasts up until maybe, I might be skipping an era, but I'm gonna go for the car next. Or no, the train. And then you can connect those cities, and you might be able to get a little slightly further outside of the city center. And then you get the car, and then people can go slightly further now. And then the car keeps advancing, and then the mass production of the car comes, and then you get the suburbs kind of deal, and the interstate area, which I think he categorizes as the newest. So you can have people who live outside of town. You can have metropolitan areas now, and that's how American cities were defined. They were defined in this weird mix of centralized and decentralized, but also defined by the racial politics of the time, because zoning laws don't come into big effect until about 1920 and so on. After I'm gonna have to pull up a really bad infographic I made like a year ago. Bad in terms of what it looks like, not bad in terms of facts. Give me a second here. So racism and zoning. While racial zoning laws were declared unconstitutional in Buchanan v. Warley, exclusionary economic zoning was allowed by Euclid v. Amber. This allowed cities to ban the building of multifamily units, effectively excluding the poor and minorities from many rich communities and white communities. Yeah.
Yeah, as I understand it, what happened there is that part of the origin of modern single family housing was to like secure the like white middle class who were wealthy enough to afford single family housing, a sort of like exclusive domain that the poor blacks and the poor non-whites in general couldn't get because they couldn't afford single family housing. They would need multifamily housing if they were going to get into the suburbs at all.
Yeah, it's also kind of a weird American dream kind of deal. Like I personally think that the American dream is a weird thing to strive towards, honestly. Like a picket fence and a like two-story house is kind of just, it's like, do you want a community?
Well, that's one of the things that's so interesting, right? Is that the apparent American dream of housing is entirely related to the built structure of where you're going to live, right? It's I want the house, I want the picket fence, I want the car. It's like the consumer durables and the built structure, but there's no community relation to any of it, right?
Yeah. And
which is so strange.
Like even I'll get into gentrification in a bit, but I want to start it with kind of, I guess, the building of like new urbanism. I don't know exactly what it's called, but like gentrification in the modern era, it's kind of a bringing of that like lack of community back into the inner city deal. Like, so like you have these buildings that are close together, and you have these people in apartments, but now these people aren't connected communally anymore, or at least they aren't now. I don't know how the effects of gentrification are going to go further into the future, and that's because Charleston's probably the biggest offender of this. But like, what happens in gentrification is that land values in like previous central business districts have gone down for decades and decades. This is probably, we're going to start this about 70s and 80s. So developers find these lands and they're really cheap, but they know that they can build on them and increase the land's value, increase the rent on them. And
Wake
because
up,
these are
liberal.
typically like inner
Hello?
city and these are near like government offices and jobs without having to bike too far
Mhm.
or take a car too far, this is where poor people normally live in cities. There's reasons poor people live in inner cities. It's not just because they were given housing there exactly. There's reasons they put housing there too.
Mhm.
So these land values are so down, and so developers, they might be able to build these buildings already, or they might be able to petition city council to upzone the area. So what happens when you upzone an area is that you can fit more apartments on a single plot. Therefore, the speculative value of that property goes up. So landlords are incentivized to like up rent, make living there as hard as possible so they can get people off those properties in order to tear them down and build something that goes up to that property limit so they can fit as many apartments in one space as possible and make much, much more money
Mhm.
on
Same amount of land.
the same amount of land. And sometimes this means that they're going to build rich housing, which brings, like, even though that's an up in the supply of housing, it's a different market of housing entirely. And some people might disagree with that. But there's a difference between the market for rich housing and there's in the housing as a whole.
So I guess one of the instincts that I feel right now is like I don't know that I would necessarily oppose developers having an incentive to build more dense housing. This sounds like a generally good thing. From what I understand it, the main problem with gentrification is meant to be that people who live in a given area don't benefit from rising prices in that area. Basically,
Yeah, I have a quote for this.
Mhm.
Let me find out where I need to start. I might start here. The
Mhm.
quote that I normally go with is a little bit lower on, but I think this is a good starting point. This is from Capital City by Samuel Stein, Gentrification and the Real Estate or the Real Estate State. This is from the end of chapter 1. Planners are allowed to do little that won't raise property values. Often they do things so directly and intentionally by incentivizing rezonings, targeting tax breaks, or gutting protective regulations in order to stimulate development. Just as often, however, increased property values are the result of genuine socially beneficial land improvements. Public improvements become private investment opportunities as those who own the land reap the benefits of beautiful urban design and improved infrastructure. Those who cannot afford the resulting rising rent, or in the case of homeowners, rising property assessments, are expelled, priced
Mhm.
out, foreclosed, evicted, made homeless, or in the best case scenario, granted a one-time buyout that will not afford them a new home in the neighborhood or even the city. Preservationist Michael Henry Adams has chronicled this dynamic as it unfolds in Harlem, where he has fought to maintain the tremendous record of Black history and culture that is contained in both the neighborhood's architecture and the memories of its long term residents. He recounts the conversation between two young people in the neighborhood who were coming to terms with the greening of their block, which is like new
Mhm.
trees, new flowers, whatever. After speaking with the children about his activism, Adam recalls one telling the other, "You see, I told you, they didn't plant those trees for us." It was painful to realize how even a kid could see in every new building, every historic renovation, every boutique clothing shop, indeed, in every tree and every flower, in every park improvement, not a life enhancing benefit, but a harbinger of his own displacement. End quote.
Yeah, no, I think that the fundamental critique is meant to be that ideally you would want Like the ideal market socialist future is one where profit is entirely aligned with like people's incentives. People like what benefits people is exactly identical to profit. You can never get there, but it's clear sometimes that these forms of profit can be at odds with things that benefit people. So like the idea is that like the people who live in a given area and presumably have been involved in like this improvement, have been there for a while, don't face any benefits from increasing value of that area. And so I know that one of the classic proposals to fix this sort of thing are like local, sort of like a social wealth fund, but on a very, very small scale, to have like a local housing wealth fund or land wealth fund where everyone who lives in a certain area is given like some dividend from rising value of that land. And so that if an area was being gentrified, your cost of living would go up, but it'd be partially or possibly wholly offset by dividends from like the increased value of land in that area.
Yep, that seems like an interesting proposal. On the planning side, I believe the book proposes a mix of centralized and decentralized planning because, like, currently it's purely centralized planning because you have like your city manager or however your city's structured, kind of like the one say, and then developers get to chip in because you don't go to city meetings or whatever they hold because you have a job and you have to go to school or whatever you do. So he proposes a mixed system because, like, the community's not going to be able to know everything at all times. That's the benefit of having a republic. So you're going to want to have community involvement, but you're not going to want to have full community involvement because you still want people who dedicate their lives to city planning to do the city planning.
Whose job is city planning, right? So that they don't have the alternate job like everyone else does, but also their job is in the benefit of the people, right? They aren't a private developer. They're like a quote unquote public developer. Nominally, their interests are aligned with yours.
I mean, they're still a public developer no matter what. It's just
like a city planner. Sorry, like
they have their pockets.
Yeah, sure.
You want more accountability for these people, but you also want these people because they're the best way to do it. Because you don't want to always have to think about, oh, do I want an ice cream shop on this corner, or do I want it in this corner? Do I want it in this corner? Blah blah blah. How would it affect the coffee shop next to it? How would it shop the burger shop across the street? Blah blah blah. You don't have to think about that all the time. Anytime you want like one new business to come up. And you also don't want to have like a resolution go out to the entire town every time a new business is like, hey, I want to open here. So you got to kind of like mix it.
Yeah, like that seems like the classic argument for some degree of democratic election for these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Sure. So I guess I don't know that I necessarily disagree with any of the things here. I just don't know if they've been put into like concrete terms. I guess if we're focusing on like the administrative element of urban planning, I would be very happy to believe that there's some form of like mixed local and central planning is effective, because in general I think that the federal structure where there's some local control and some central control seems to do the best at offering some degree of like unity, some degree of efficiency, and some degree of like hands-offness, but also some degree of local democratic control.
Yeah, I mean, it matters really what you call effective because people are going to have different definitions for it. Like, ooh, do I really want to piss off that group? Friends in that group. Just kind of, how am I want to phrase this?
Are there like urban planning groups that are going to get very offended?
No. There's just ideas of like, I am anti like maximum density, which some people are for, kind of solving the idea. They just like build the tallest fucking towers possible, put them all next to each other, and boom, housing solved. And I'm like, sure, but you probably created like 100 different other problems that you now have to solve.
Probably.
Yeah, I'm not for that. I'm also kind of pro building height restrictions after I watched a Cheddar video on it.
I don't have any firm opinions about height restrictions. I know that in general, I would presume that I would like things to be built like quote unquote efficiently. And so I think that by the very structure of like, if we think that the market is functioning well, by its very nature, it shouldn't build things too high or too short. If you like limit construction to certain areas, then by its very nature, the market will, and the people within it will be forced to build buildings of certain heights. I guess I'm just not.
Yeah.
I'm not. Sure.
But like there's the city kind of needing to block the incentive of just building the tallest tower possible deal, because the
Well, the
cheddar
reason they
dough deal
don't is because it's
itself,
expensive. It
it
costs
might be
money.
expensive, but you might be able to get the most money out of it, honestly. Um,
Well, that's
I guess there's the point where like getting it taller, the marginal cost is more than the marginal benefit, but still.
well. So I guess the idea here is that ideally, what you would also want is for rent to be like aligned with people's social interests. So the idea is that maximizing rent should also mean maximizing other things, ideally, and that's a very hard goal to establish. But like part of what that would mean is, if hypothetically, you would ideally want businesses to be encouraged to, like say, either subsidized or taxed to build certain types of buildings where there's like, say, I think that it seems like mixed use development and the type of development that I was talking about before in the Soviet example, where like services were very easily accessible. These all seem to improve people's quality of life, but they aren't reflected in rent value explicitly. They're only reflected in rent value in terms of like competitive value. And so it would be nice if those things could be like priced into the cost of rent. And so perhaps you could do so explicitly by like subsidizing or taxing certain things. Yeah, we can hear you, Cameron. You're doing.
Yeah, I was just checking because I've only tuned in when you were talking.
Well, sorry for talking the whole time.
I guess no. I just check. I only check my phone when I'm not talking. Like, not to be rude, like I'm still listening. I just like look down and just be like, I wonder if they can hear me.
You don't need to apologize for it. I think we all do it. I guess the suggestion that I would give is that I think that it's like one of the things that I found really, really interesting as like an inspiration from Soviet urban planning is this idea of a micro district related to the idea of a linear city. Is the idea that within any given housing block, they propose like 4 tiers of like services that you should have access to. And so tier 1 was things you need daily access to, tier 2 was things you need like weekly, tier 3 was monthly, and tier 4 was like yearly sort of thing. And so tier 1 meant stuff like housing. You need to be able to sleep each night. It means stuff like schooling. It means often stuff like ideally transit to your workplace. And so then like you have like weekly, which often means stuff like doctors would be like located within a certain distance from your house. And then even further, like monthly, it might be like specialists for health or like certain types of like recreation that you would do rarely. And then finally you'd have like vacations. Those are like the yearly sort of thing. And so I think that basically, ideally, what you'd want is for market price to fully reflect this. And it's not clear that the rent price actually fully reflects this, in part because people are forced by housing scarcity to choose a house not based on amenities per se, but in large part just on their ability to get a house. So I think that there's some degree of coercion in the market by scarcity, basically.
Definitely. Going back to like multi-center and gentrification too, as just thinking about Charleston in particular, I don't know how many people in the comments have been to Charleston. It's just a name that people recognize. But Charleston has been extremely gentrified in the last 2-3 decades, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? Like black people were on the island. There's a fair amount of black businesses, and gentrification happened, and then they just keep getting moved up north and north as the years go. So like the poorer areas just keep moving up, and then more gentrification comes. They tear down buildings and then build new ones that just are blocky and modernist and a little ugly and have no character, and then they get moved out, and it's like, oh gosh, why do we only have one black business or one black restaurant on the peninsula? I couldn't have expected that fucking coming. But like it's also multi-centered in a different way, not in the way that the previous city I was talking about is, in that everybody has to go to certain centers, but that people are focused in on certain centers to kind of separate them. So it's anti-community, or it's anti-multi-community city planning, I guess is the correct way. So you have College of Charleston there, and then there's like bars and restaurants area, one bars and restaurants area put around them, so they stay in that area. And then as you go further down towards the end of the peninsula, that's the richer area. You have the old slave market there, which is now just the regular market. So like these are the areas where the rich people stay, which are the people that can actually afford to live on that side and aren't just living there for college or just because they somehow are able to afford rent. So like these people are kind of separated, just the people that are passing by for 4 years, 4 to 8 years, and the people that are like living there permanently, so they don't ever have to really interact with each other.
They don't have to integrate. I
And-
know that. Sorry, go ahead.
Like thinking about it, there's no hotels after like like a few streets above. There's a thing called Bay Street, which like one side is like where the business district and the other side is where like the rich housing goes. Like the lawyers that argue for like Purdue chicken to be able to put as much like wood powder in it as possible. That's where those people live. Like evil people live there. There might be a few okay people there that are like rich off of daddy's money or whatever, but like the rest are like lawyers, doctor. I'm not gonna call doctors evil, obviously, but like the rest are just people who make money through means. It's really hard to get a lot of money without doing some evil shit. But like, there's not a hotel for a fairly while above that street. Like, it's kind of just these people are just like completely disconnected from like any tourism, any other people, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they probably did that on purpose. Like, just they get their secluded community among people that are just like them.
Well, I guess I don't like income segregated communities. I don't necessarily know that having a community which might be like less tied into, say, like tourism might not necessarily be a bad thing, just because you do want some degree of letting people choose where to live and choose the type of people they want to interact with. And so, like, ideally, I think that I don't necessarily have a problem with that per se, but I do think that there is a big concern of like lack of economic mixing, more or less. This is on race proper, but one of the things that we know that really, really improves like racial achievement gaps, like that reduces it, is racial integration. And a lot of that comes down to, in part, economic integration as well. And so there's this really big problem where poor kids just don't get the social experiences that rich kids have, and part of that is literally because they're not in the same social groups. This sounds like a really big problem
on the podcast, honestly.
Yeah, no, their income segregation is pretty bad, at least as far as I'm aware.
I mean, I don't think there's any facts proving that income segregation is not bad. Almost stumbled on my words there.
Yeah, well, I guess so. I don't know too much in particular about Charleston, so I can't.
I imagine not. I don't know where you're from, so
I'm in a suburb near Baltimore City.
Baltimore.
I've
passed by there on my way to cooler cities like New York and Washington.
Look, Baltimore's the shit, okay? Let's see. What was I gonna say? Baltimore would be the shit if it had good transit, okay? the one good thing...
I love a good public transit system. Like, when I was in junior year, I went to Knoxville and they had a trolley with like 3 different tracks on it. And I like almost like had a mind orgasm because I was like, I fucking love this. Like, you literally don't have, like, there's homeless people here. This is fucking great.
I know that. So I guess some of the things we touched on are like built environment as it relates to community. We've touched on gentrification. We've touched on like the history of like displacement.
Yeah.
Are there any of these issues that you'd like be really interested, or any issue that you'd be interested in like drilling down a little bit on? Or
I did want to talk about YIMBY discourse for a little bit, but
Sure.
I don't want to go too long because I know I'll piss off people.
This is a low stakes event. Don't worry.
Low stakes event. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I need to piss off people. I have 69 followers on Twitter.
Yeah, you need the clout, the anger clout.
I need more clout. Yeah, go follow me on Twitter, everybody. Just follow the Leftology Twitter, honestly. And then follow me from there. I'll be a shill right now. Leftist shill, communist shill, or whatever I am. But like YIMBYism, I kind of have a
Wake up,
problem with
liberal.
what I'm going to
I love
define
you.
as pure YIMBYism. Is that one thing, that one issue of building more supply on its own, and I think we've kind of all gone into that. Because there was somebody on Twitter yesterday, I forgot the name, and I'm not going to shout them out either, but like they were talking about how supply of like even richer housing drives down prices for housing as a whole, which is true. It's proven. It is true that it brings down housing prices as a whole because the people that moved into the cities now have empty units where they used to live, and those are going to go down in price. But that also requires you to displace entire communities to achieve that, which is kind of not good.
Yeah, no, I think that one of the I do think that some people in YIMBY circles tend to not give a shit about displacement or gentrification. I do think that's a problem. Ideally, I do think that I think that a big part of the point or the utility of YIMBY discourse is supposed to be just simply combating NIMBY discourse, which is very focused on increasing home values, which if anything is like doubly problematic because it has all the same bads as gentrification, but not increasing housing supply, right?
I'm just like, don't do gentrification to increase housing supply. There's other better ways of urban renewal and urban planning. People have thought about this. They have plans.
So I guess, so if gentrification seems to be one of the common themes that's like running through all of what you're discussing a little bit. So like, let's say gentrification bad. What is the Cameron Stonian alternative to gentrification? What do we do better? What do we do different?
So the book I have here, it suggests building affordable housing in rich communities to drive the price down. But that's going to be really fucking hard to do because these people have control, because they have money and free time, because you work 2 hours doing a consulting job where you are on your desk and you look at your phone on TikTok for 2 hours, and then you get paid $100,000 a month. And then you get to influence local elections. That is a generalization, and I will stand by it and defend it on Twitter.
Sure. I mean, so I guess then the solution sounds like do gentrification in the poor areas, meaning build housing for rich in the poor areas, and do poorification, povertification to the rich areas.
In the rich areas.
Well, you gotta do a little switcheroo, right? You've displaced some of the rich people. Where are they going to go? Well, over to the gentrified like tenements downtown, and then now you've displaced some of the poor people. Where are they going to go? Well, up to the rich area and some of the poor housing that you built. So we just do a little switcheroo.
Did gentrification again?
Well, no, we built the housing for the poor in the rich area, right? So now the rich area has the poorest.
Yes, but you've also displaced them, which I think is the thing we need to avoid. So I specifically think, like the plan I have is, I guess, is kind of just handing out property and money. I firmly think that we should investigate a government construction agency. I don't think we should rely on private businesses to do it all. That means I think the government can operate at a loss. Therefore, it can build cool things. I'm personally anti-brutalism. I think it should be restricted from building brutalism.
Cringe.
If it's not, it's just going to fucking build brutalism. So, like, do cool stuff, like Art Deco, more Art Deco of public housing. I want more Art Deco public housing. That'd be really cool. Like, imagine you're in public housing and you get to dress like a 20s character.
I think that the only thing I need to say, I think, to get you on board with, like, so I'll say two things. One, it just sounds like all I need to do to get you on board is each like block just change the art style, right? Just like, hey, block 1, you're gonna be like number 1 brutalism, and block number 2, you're gonna be number 1 Art Deco, and block number 3, you're gonna be number 1 modernism. And each block will be different, and you'll be like, ah, yes, I am finally happy with this.
Okay,
one of the things. Go ahead.
Let me show you. Like, there's some okay brutalism. It's far and few between, and I suspect that the government's not going to build it. So I'm gonna send you pictures in your.
Did you know that Trump literally tried to restrict federal building codes to be neoclassical?
I don't agree with that. I do think brutalism should be banned. Honestly,
I don't know. It does sound kind of Trumpian to me.
Okay, so I sent you a picture of this. And
my man is sending me pictures of. Oh, it's got an exterior like elevator thing. This is gross.
Okay, so look at that. Around that is what the government is going to build if you ask them to build public housing at the lowest cost possible.
No, they're just gonna build bricks. It's just all gonna be brick tenements like in New York City. That's what they do right now.
Then I mean, I'd consider that.
Look,
It's close.
bricks.
It's
bricks
bricks
already look like
This is
20%
cool
better.
brutalism.
Bricks already look 20% better than concrete.
I'll agree with that one. Okay, this is cool brutalism. It has a little bit of green. It's not one block. It's a bunch of different blocks. I'm not sure if you're pulling these up on stream or not, but this looks a lot cooler.
I wasn't pulling them up, but here I can. Yeah, I don't think that this last one is in any way realistic.
Probably not. It just looks
what is
cooler.
what is
I found
the
it on Google
American
Images.
what is ADA gonna say about this, chat? I just want you to tell me how is my how is my stepfather gonna get through this building? Okay, tell me that.
Oh wait, no. Here, this is what I'm looking for. This is American brutalism.
Bad Bayesian sent me this. Okay, but there's nothing inside of this. It's literally just like a monument. The actual building is just a square block like every other building. Why not build it out of brick?
But let me open that up. Oh, that?
Okay, this right here, the thing that you just sent me, is literally every courthouse.
Oh yeah. That's what I want to stop from happening.
No, it's good. This is good.
That's good.
This is good for
Bar.
places people don't need to live in.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, every like in every government building should look like this, and every housing building should be Art Deco. This we've achieved maximum perfection.
I'll agree with that. I prefer if government buildings look cooler, but I'll take what I can get.
So, one of the things that that struck me a little bit, again, doing the Soviet example, one of the things that, so they obviously had a series of set of government funded firms. One of the big things they did to try and cut down on housing costs was create standardized designs and slam them everywhere because it avoids the problem of having to re-architect each one. And the other big thing that they did is prefabricated building. So instead of like bricklaying individual pieces, they would literally construct walls and other like segments in factories and ship them out like in like trucks to be assembled on the spot.
I do think that might be a good thing to look for a temporary solution, but I honestly don't want people permanently living in housing like that's just kind of put up on the spot.
I don't know, kind of based.
Like, I do think we need to look at it as a, like, I guess it's just me and wanting like a floor for people to live, like a floor, like, what's the word? A theoretical floor for people to live on, like they live above certain standards, kind of deal.
No, I to be perfectly honest, I don't disagree with any of this. I just know the prefabricated thing is just interesting because it's persisted into modern Russia, and so you still have modern buildings built in the same design where they'll have one structure that they plop down 20 times, and they'll build all the things in a factory like a little like prefabricated. We still do prefabricated stuff in the United States. It's just very, very common in the former Soviet Union.
Yeah, we have prefabricated stuff. It's just less efficient.
I want to say that there was a whole during the early 50s and 60s, the early suburbs were like like literally buy a house in Sears catalog. I'm pretty sure that those houses were highly standardized, and some parts of them were even industrialized. But yeah, I don't know that we did so. I don't know. Yeah, Levittowns suck. I don't know that we ever did so for apartment buildings en masse, but I guess I would need to read into that. That was the main thing the Soviets were doing. They were just plopping down a million housing buildings.
Yeah, this is that version. This is the American version of just plopping as many houses down as possible.
Okay, but that looks cute and modern. It's one of the styles you should like.
It looks a little cute, yes, but there's just so many better architectural styles, honestly, than just this is just slightly better brutalism, honestly.
Oh my god. You can't call it brutalism when it has like structural insets and stuff. Brutalism is when you have a square and it's made out of concrete.
This is just like this is something I could build in Minecraft fairly easily. Give me like an hour.
Oh my god. Look, Cam wants to call this brutalism. Look at
It's
this.
close,
Look at this.
okay?
Embarrass them
It's-
for this. Look at this. It's. Brutalism is Orwellian. This is literally 1984.
I mean,
Well,
a little.
Sure. So
I mean, what it stands for, at least. Like, what seeing these buildings in your community stands for is a little Orwellian.
So I guess I don't have any particular opposition to a lot of the things that we've like alluded to in this conversation. I just didn't know if you had a particular issue that you were really strong on that like I guess one of the things I like to look for is like interesting new research that I haven't heard of before. I don't know if you've got
I don't do much research. I just walk around for city planning and be like, this is cool. What I've noticed is that no cities have these things that I really like called public bathrooms.
mhm.
The function of having a public bathroom means that I don't have to walk into a restaurant and ask them if I can use the bathroom. I can just find the public bathroom and go there. And it frustrates me because in pandemic times, everybody's like, oh, you have to buy something or you can't use our bathroom, or else you have to get lucky and find the 2 places in town that have a public bathroom. And you're just like, oh, well, guess I'm screwed and have a full bladder for the next hour and a half until I can drive to my house or Airbnb or a hotel room.
I know that one of the things that really struck me is just a short little piece from No Opinion on their trip to, I want to say, Japan, and how there was a real lack of public spaces and public services there. There was like no public Wi-Fi, there were a few public benches, and there were no public restrooms, and that was the one that really got them. And so unless you wanted to pay for something, you couldn't. And so it was this like perfectly marketized sort of view of the public space, right? That the only way you should get access to things is if you can pay for them. And
I don't like that.
their point is that they were saying that this world isn't actually a world where they are more meaningfully free. That like more markets doesn't mean more freedom, because having to think about whether they want to spend like 25 cents to pee is like a great annoyance. It's actually really fucking annoying, and it doesn't make you more free. It's just another thing that makes you slightly more anxious.
Like, think of the benefits of a public bathroom in a downtown space, as I would explain it to a city developer, city manager. So you put maybe, say you have a small little downtown. It takes up 3 or 4 blocks and it's a square pattern 2 by 2. You put maybe you space out maybe 2 or 3 public bathrooms, put them in between 2 buildings. You have your male or female, or you could do 2 gender neutral bathrooms, which I honestly prefer the what's it called? The Charleston Visitor Center has this cool thing where it's like one long bathroom with like 20 stalls that are like full doors, so anybody can use them. And then they just have like a sink area that's like for everybody. I endorse that because it's the most efficient way to do a bathroom.
I guess the only idea there is that if you don't build full walls, you don't have to do any of the like. You don't have to do. I totally forget the names for it. You don't have to do like the bottom stuff where you don't have to build like the plaster walls or anything. It's all just sort of like prefabricated plastic stuff that you can get up really easily and really cheaply, and maybe even save some space. So I would like that if they just went like a few meters higher or lower. And apparently the story for why, though, to anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, you know those like blue things that you get in public restrooms, right? Where it's like
Blue things?
like it's like blue plastic, green plastic, black plastic sort of stuff. Do you?
Is it something in the bathroom, or are you talking about like the door?
Yeah, no, in like the bathroom walls, the sort of walls they have around the bathroom.
Ooh, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Like the dividers?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So all I was saying is that the dividers could be like space efficient, and they could also be cost efficient. So I don't necessarily know that I'm totally on board with the idea of like having full rooms, if that's what you're saying. However,
it's a small little. It's not much bigger than a stall. Maybe like an extra like square foot, just like kind of put in. But it makes it where there's like full privacy, which I think is worth sacrificing for slightly more material cost, because it makes people more comfortable being in the same bathroom with another gender. But yeah, like doing that, as I was saying, like spacing them out fairly well so that they're in spaces that people normally walk in, means that people are going to spend more time downtown, and the more people spend downtown, the more they're likely to spend downtown. I used to spend in different types of ways there. If you didn't catch that, so it's kind of like having free parking for a new up and coming downtown to incentivize people coming downtown. Because if you put a $2 parking for an hour, people are only going to come there when the demand is like extremely high.
No, so I'm on board with this sort of stuff. I don't know. I guess the one of the big things that I think about when we're talking about build spaces, I started out with this, is like thinking about the way that it would force people to interact. And so I know that like in public spaces, you don't necessarily need or want people interacting in like bathrooms, but I do think that like building spaces where there are bathrooms adjacent and it's very easy to access those bathrooms, and it's like it's free for everyone, can create like a true space where everyone is acceptable, where everyone is accepted, regardless of income, regardless of status, sort of thing. So it can build like a more sort of communal space. And I know that it's like to me at least, it's the tiniest way where you can build like a more properly inclusive organization.
Yeah.
Or community or build space, whatever I was trying to say.
I mean, there's probably a lot of different ways you could handle that problem. Like I've seen a lot of local businesses, they normally have like 2 one-stall kind of deal. And it used to be male and female, and they're just like,
now they're just like, it's more efficient just to call it both. You know, that is, unironically, that's one of those things that pissed me off to no goddamn end. Is to me, it was always little delis in the area, little like tiny little eating areas, and they would have 2 bathrooms. One would be male and one would be female, but the one would always be full. It's like the male one would be full, and I'm like, well, the female one is empty. If I go in there, what the fuck does it matter?
yeah, because you're kind of stopped by like societal interpretations of what you're about to do.
I don't know. I know I've gone in plenty of like nominally female restrooms. But when you really gotta poop, I don't give a shit. Yeah, no.
Like,
sorry, go ahead.
Neutral bathrooms are more market efficient.
Based, and we love the market, don't we?
Sometimes.
This chat loves profit. Profit by any ends. This is the neoliberal hour.
Milton Friedman moment. POV, you ruin Louisiana state school systems.
So I guess, I know that I know I delayed you for a little bit. We've gotten to about 1 hour. I guess, is there one topic you'd maybe like to talk about as like a sort of ending note to this conversation?
Ending note.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add like a little one before I go into it? Just like 2 sentences.
Sure.
Okay. So Mouthy said, I'm going to add some stuff to this. But you are a tanky neoliberal liberal sympathizer, and you need to do another episode of the podcast with them.
Look, I'd be happy to organize it. I just get lazy, and then he gets lazy, and then I get lazy, and then he gets lazy, okay? It's really
I was
simple.
asked to be a middleman, and I thought it'd be fun to do it on stream.
Well, thank you for the reminder. I'll have to try and organize something. I think originally we were going to talk about the minimum wage. That discourse has kind of passed on by, but I'd be happy to do it.
If you ever need a leftology guest, whenever you need a pull up and viewers or whatever, I'll gratefully come on and get you guys the 70 subscribers that aren't me or my friends to come watch you guys.
I would be happy to sometime down the road get you on. I think.
Yeah, I need to plan out when I do these episodes too.
Well, so I guess I'd be happy to do that sort of podcast thing. Is there any topic about urban planning in particular that you'd be interested in closing out on, or
closing out? Just let me cycle through. Like I have a theory on like what defines a business. If that'd be a cool thing.
Sure.
So I don't know how interesting this is. Hopefully this is somehow interesting to the people watching. This is supposed to be entertainment. But there's probably more. I haven't developed this theory as much as I probably will in the end. But like what defines a business? Because a business is 1/3 of like how you can zone a city if you're pro zoning, which I kind of am. Because I don't want zoning. I don't want zoning anarchy. I don't want developers to just be able to build whatever the fuck they want. But I'm also not pro Euclidean zoning, which is what we have. But it's still a major part of the city. It's like
What, you want non-Euclidean zoning? You want like zoning that goes beyond the bounds of like our 3D existence?
I want zoning that's not Euclidean zoning, which is like exclusionary zoning. It's the same thing as exclusionary zoning.
Sure. So
But
just more like mixed use sort of zoning.
I'm pro like having an entire city as mixed use, and then having like industry wherever the fuck you put industry.
Well, isn't so? I guess it would be still zoning. You're just restricting the types of zoning that you're engaging in, right?
Look at the Japanese system is the closest what I can think of.
I would be interested in getting any reading about that if you've got anything.
I don't want this to be the final topic, but let me send you our poorly done Instagram infographic on it.
Sure.
And
I'd be
then
happy
it
to.
has the sources on the end.
Sure. What topic would you like to end on?
I could do the business one, my
Sure.
theory of what makes up businesses, or what makes up the appeal of businesses, and that also gets into malls. I could talk about the failure of malls, which is a thing I like talking about. Would that be interesting to you?
Sure. Why don't we pick one?
My theory of mall also revolves somewhat around the little bit of a basis of the business part. This sounds a little complicated. I feel like I'm not explaining this well.
Sure. Why don't maybe break it down in a chunk first? So, what's your theory of business?
So my theory of business is just like the appeal of business, why a customer's going into a business, or why they go to a specific style of business, whatever. So I have 4 qualities so far. So far, there's gonna be more, or this might be the final version. I have no idea. But right now, I have the first point is efficiency versus environment, which is like the environment of the business, which I will include as like the community the business is formed and the aesthetics that make it the physical building itself. Then the second one, I have product quality, which is like obvious. Businesses make more money when they have better products, kind of deal. The outside environment that surrounds the business, obviously, and then the appeal of the city center they're in. Like if, like a business, if they're stationed in the old mall that nobody goes to anymore, they're obviously not going to stay in business for very long. But my idea of why malls failed centers around the first one, which is efficiency versus environment. So I don't want to say like when you give up community or aesthetics, you get a 1-to-1 ratio of efficiency kind of deal. But like to get big, you kind of do have to get rid of kind of the idea of a community, and like you don't have to completely get rid of aesthetics. Because you have places like Barnes and Noble. I don't know if everybody has been to a Barnes and Noble or not, which have fairly good like aesthetics reasonings,
Wake
and
up,
it's
liberal.
okay as a
Hello?
community spot. Like you can go there and read and stuff, but you're not really gonna form like a friend group at Barnes and Noble like you would more at a local business. But it also has fairly okay efficiency too. Like it's given up a little on the community aspect to get that big in order to be efficient. And then you have like Amazon. Amazon has no community appeal. There's no community in Amazon. Like, there's negative community. Amazon is evil. But it's like extremely efficient. Like I ordered a book called the Jakarta Method at like 4 p.m. and I had it within 24 hours. Like I didn't leave my house. Extremely efficient. No aesthetics other than maybe the website. No community at all. This is where the mall comes in. So the mall comes in the 70s and 80s or slightly before that, and it's kind of like a little crossroads kind of deal. It's like if you wanted to achieve a market equilibrium of efficiency and environment, that's the mall for you. So like they have it's somewhat efficient in that you get all these like chain stores in one place. A lot of malls aren't really accessible to local stores for one reason or the other. You don't really see them there that often. Like you might see a couple. But so you get the efficiency of having them all in one place, but you kind of take a little bit off of community, not entirely. Like you could make a friend group there, but you're not as much as like if you all live together, you guys go to local businesses that maybe have like a few hundred customers a day kind of deal, like I have at my local coffee shop back home.
Hmm.
So the malls failed because you can get both now. You don't have to. You don't have
Wake
to
up, liberal.
shave off
I love you.
efficiency for environment because you can just order off something on Amazon and then you can go to your local coffee shop. You can get best of
Hmm.
both worlds without having to sacrifice your time.
I could definitely see that. I don't know enough to do like the analysis of whether malls are living or dying. I know that personally, I know that my friends and I have gone like mall hopping or whatever. I don't know, like we've gone around malls for sort of like going to many
Wake
stores,
up,
sort of social
liberal. I
experience.
love you.
So that might be why people do it. To me, it's almost the sense of, I don't know if you want to call it community. That seems to be, in fact, the only reason that we would go to malls nowadays, which might just be because it's so absent elsewhere, which is what you're pointing to. So that could absolutely be true. But I don't have enough data to know whether, like, what you describe is true in general, either for the
There
business
might
of the
be
firm
some
or for
problems
malls.
with it, but I'm gonna go like in abstract. It's
Mm-hmm.
close because like malls, they do have their like community spaces. Like you can go to the food court, you can hang out with your friends, you can sit around the fountain normally. But like if you go to a normal, I went to a mall like right before we got on stream, like an hour or two beforehand, which was
Mm-hmm.
the one around my college, and it's depressing really because a lot of the stores have moved out. So you still have like the lights, and it's just like store after store of just empty things, and then there's like maybe I want to say I'm gonna guess it's a mall built for maybe 30 to 40 businesses, just to give you guys an idea, and there's maybe 15 in there. So it's just a lot of empty space that just it gives you an eerie feeling, and like all the aesthetics are gone, and it's kind of a lot of malls were built in the 70s and 80s, so they're kind of time stamped in how they were built, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is kind of a failing of city planning. Um, it's time stamped in a bad way, is what I want to say, because they were built for efficiency, and
But
they were built
efficiency has
like
gone,
a
right?
lower cost kind of deal. Like there's not much aesthetic appeal in walking in between stores at a mall, and I feel like uh, comments. Do you guys agree with that? I don't know.
Uh, I guess I don't know that it's a failure of city planning per se, because I think that I don't know that how much city planners had to do with like the interior design of malls.
Oh no,
I
no. I mean it's a it's bad architecture in a way, like
Sure.
design, I guess. Because there's good timestamps. Timestamps are
Wake
good.
up,
Like having a
liberal. I
diversified
love you.
time city, like time-wise city, like having uh 17 or 18th century buildings mixed in with 19th and then 20th and then now 21st century building. That's good. That gives it a feel of like the city. It builds a culture. But just having this one large building that looks like it's stuck in the 80s is not great.
Sure. I mean, that could be an argument against having malls per se, and instead having like a common area, like a public square, and then and like zoning for businesses around them, sort of thing, right? Um, even for fucking like I guess like if you're in the suburbs, like strip sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
like downtown areas. I love downtown areas. They're great, which is pretty much just a better version of the mall.
so with the theory of why malls have collapsed, now that we've gotten Cameron's unified theory of mall collapse, um, why don't we do maybe like the outro show? Um,
Outro shill.
so I do. So one thing that I asked you at the start, but I forgot to make you say explicitly, though you did mention it throughout the stream, is just one book that informed your thinking on this topic.
Yeah, Capital City by Samuel Stein. I don't know if I could turn my video on or not. Um,
I
let
can
me
just post a link to it for people.
yeah, I put it in the thing you asked me.
Mm-hmm.
It's on Verso. They regularly give out pretty like I think there's like a lot of times you can get like a 20% or 30% off if you just wait for the right month. Um, I love the website Verso. They give me deals, so it makes me feel like I'm saving money when I buy books. I'm just building up my shelf and wasting my savings account.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great book. Chapter 4 is on like the Trump family, and like it's extremely easy to get through. Like it's just so well written. Like it's 40 pages, and I maybe got through it in an hour. It's it's a really good book, and it has a lot of good suggestions. It's not pro NIMBY, but I also don't think it's pro YIMBY either. It takes a lot more nuanced stance, and it really informed me a lot. Definitely suggest getting it if you have access to.
Sure. Well, I'll check it out. I'll see whether I can access it via an alternate procurement method. Why don't we
cannot
do?
officially give you the ebook.
Why don't we do the standards? Why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and where people can find you?
So I'll finish off just like I started. I'm Cameron Karsten. I'm a podcaster / college student. Hopefully, I'll have a real job soon. But go find me at Leftology / Leftology podcast. We are on Twitter. We'll tweet fairly regularly. We're also on YouTube. Please go check us out on YouTube. That is mainly where I focus on our statistics.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a Spotify, if you have an Apple Music, if you have a Google Podcast, etc., if you have, we might even be on like Deezer Podcast if that even exists. Whatever your podcast, wherever you get podcasts from, we're on there. We're on the iTunes store. Check it out. We have 10 episodes now. If you want the one that Socialism Done Left is, I believe it is episode 7.
The one good one. The rest are terrible.
I mean, there's the mouthy episode, which you can say what you want about.
Oh, no. Well, the rest are terrible, but one is horrifically terrible then.
Yeah, we have a good thing. We got a good round of guests so far. We have Thor C from Coping MAGA. If you guys are like too online, which I suspect you guys are because you are SDL fans, please go outside. We have SDL on. We had Mouthy on. We had the president of the United Rural Democrats on. We had somebody that was running for House of Representatives at the United States level in my local district for college on. Yeah, we haven't posted a month, but we hope to get more content out to you guys soon. So please go subscribe if you can. We're getting really close to 100 subscribers.
Sure. I sent their link in the chat. Feel free to give them a sub. They seem to be reasonably high quality. Thank you again for coming on, Cam.
Talk to you later. I hope everybody has a great night.
Sure.
Hopefully discourse doesn't get too bad on guns.
It always does.